Welcome back, guys. Chase with ChaseWins.com, Venture Sports Consulting. Another topic for you guys. This one it hits close to home, near and dear to my heart, kind of with a heavy heart that I'm talking about it. But this is something that I knew as soon as it was announced that I would be flooded with questions and emails about it because people know how much it affects me personally as a sports fan. And that is Theo Epstein, the president and overall, director of baseball operations for my beloved Chicago Cubs, stepping down after 9 seasons with the Cubs. Taking over at the start of the 2011 season, he architected one of the greatest turnarounds and rebuilds in the game's history. And for many of you that don't dive into baseball as much as I do, one of my favorite things about the game is the inner workings, just not just what's on the field. I love what goes on in a front office. That's one of the things that has always intrigued me so much about the game is what goes on behind those closed doors, in the boiler rooms, in the war rooms, when they are building a team, drafting a team, scouting a team, the farm system, how players move up from just being looked at to, at a high school or college level to the product that you see at the ballpark and on TV, when they take that major league field and what it can turn into. Now, before we get further into this, I wanted to let everybody know to that we will do a free play video for everyone. It's an underdog play for NFL Sunday football at the end of this video. So make sure you watch the duration of it, and somewhere towards the end, there will be a free play for you. So anyway, going back to Theo, obviously, like I said, most of you may only look at the players on the field. You might know the manager. A lot of people don't know who the general managers are, who runs baseball operations, who is the president, who does the director of scouting. All of that is actually what intrigues me the most, outside of the players on the field. And for anybody that don't know, Theo is a Yale graduate. He was a big math and numbers guy. So he was really big into the world of analytics and how analytics got brought into baseball. And before Boston broke the curse of the Bambino and won a championship, about 6, 7 years prior to that, well, we'll just say a decade prior to that, analytics and over statistical analysis started being brought into baseball, where it was much more statistical and math driven by formulas and algorithms, and so much where it was basically these algorithms created which would do the work of building the team for you based on numbers instead of the old school of getting true baseball guys in a room and out on the road to go scout talent with their own two eyes. And Theo is not a former player. He didn't have a role as manager before getting into this role, where a lot of people do. He had not even been in the game for a long time before he started getting into these roles. It was his education. Baseball teams wanted Ivy League douchebags. That's just point blank how you needed to put it. And when he got that job in Boston, that's when he started taking his analytics background and his knowledge of it, along with his love and knowledge for the way a team is built from the ground up, like a grassroots team, and showing how baseball was being destroyed by analytics, not just from the standpoint of it making the game less entertaining, which it did and was. And I think Theo even stated that he thought that analytics was making the game less entertaining for fans because you didn't have those polarizing, flamboyant baseball guys as managers anymore. You didn't have the guys that would run out and kick dirt and spit on be chewing tobacco and spit it on your shoes. You had guys that could read a stat sheet or could read an overly saturated scouting report, and that's what they went off of. Was they were looking at papers and iPads, and they were not iPads back in that day, but that's what they were looking at to make decisions versus using their knowledge and experience of the game, how it's played, and how it's understood. And so, what he wanted to do was use analytics where it needs to be used, use them the correct way, but truly from a grassroots level, build a team that was a championship team. And of course, nobody believed him when he went to Boston. And they said, this kid, he's this little gap toothed kid from Yale. He's a numbers guy. And they wanted to throw in his face that he didn't know baseball. But the people telling him he doesn't know baseball are the same people that are like him that really don't know baseball. And of course, he did what he needed to do, and he broke that curse in 2004, winning Boston its first championship since the Babe Ruth days, and then again in 2007. And then after that kind of came to a head, he started to build that team back up again from a complete rebuild standpoint, and it's when he felt like it was his time to leave. When the Ricketts family ended up buying the Cubs, Tom obviously being the chairman, but his brother and his sister, obviously they got their father to buy the team. They took everything over, and I think they ended up buying it for about $900 million, and now it's worth over $3 billion, and was worth well over $2.5 billion before. It was worth $2.3 billion before they even won a World Series. But in 2010 is when it was, or 2000, yeah, late 2010 is when it was announced. He did his press conference and everything. And then in 2011, he came in to a team that didn't have a lot of talent as it was, and they had to strip down just to the frames. And I listen, as a lifelong Cubs fan, as a season ticket holder, as somebody that does not miss a beat when it comes to that team, I remember that vividly and like it was yesterday. I remember what it was like seeing a team that was middle of the road in the NL Central, and had the ability to where if things went right for them, they could have been in that top three teams, and they stripped it down, and for 2 years were the worst in the NL Central. I mean, dead last, fifth place every year. And very quickly they started making moves. And the biggest move still to date is snagging free agent John Lester and signing a huge pitching contract. It was one of the biggest free agent pitching contracts ever signed. I think it was 120 something million or 120 million dollars, and um, that was huge for the Cubs because that was one thing that they always lacked, was that stud power pitching. Even when they got good pitchers, they didn't hang around very long, and they didn't have people to back them up. So it all fell into one guy. And anybody, even people that don't understand baseball really well, understand that one pitcher can't do it for you. You're only going to get to pitch once a week. Um, and so when that happened, everybody was wondering, okay, is he just getting people like this because Lester was a Boston guy? He was there during Theo's days at Boston. He won a World Series as an all-star pitcher for the Red Sox. And they said, would he have been able to do this had it not been for his days in Boston? What's going to happen when it's a non-Red Sox free agent that comes up on the table that the Cubs need or that the Cubs are after, and Theo can't snag him because he doesn't have the relationship? And so they got Lester. Things started to look up. Obviously, in 2012 and 2013, wasn't much there. They still weren't overly successful, but that's when they went out there and started making very good trades for people like Jake Arrieta, who people have written off because of his days in Baltimore. And he ended up being one of the biggest factors in the Cubs' success from 2015 to 2017. 2015 and 16 were Jake Arrieta's career years, and he was known for those 2 years as the most dominant and feared pitcher in the NL Central. He was the guy that stood on the mound for the Chicago Cubs. He was the fan favorite, I guess you could say. And so they started doing that. Then they started building, and they also got Anthony Rizzo, again, a Boston guy, somebody that was drafted by the Padres under Jeb Hoyer, ended up coming to Boston battling cancer, went through the Boston minor league system. I saw him when he was in single and double A play, and then he went up through there, and then the Cubs got him as he started to come to form as a big league ball player. So they got him, and they got him in at the perfect time where he wasn't overly expensive. Then you have grassroots player success like Chris Bryant. They ended up getting him, ended up being a Rookie of the Year. He's been a Golden Glover. I mean, he's one of those draft picks that teams dream about. And then you have grassroots success stories that teams overlooked that Theo was zoned in on from day one of a scouting combine, and Javier Baez, who's my favorite baseball player current. And honestly, since King Griffey Jr., he's the only one that I've been able to say I have a favorite player. And so you look at people like that. You look at people like Wilson Contreras. You look at people like Dexter Fowler. You look at people like Ian Happ. You look at people like Albert Almora Jr., Starlin Castro, Ben Zobrist. All of these guys that, had it not been for Theo, would have never put on those pinstripes. And then I think one of the most impressive moves that I saw Theo make in his tenure with the Cubs was at the beginning of 2016. Aroldis Chapman was coming to the end of his contract with the Yankees. Aroldis had clearly stated many times he loved being a Yankee. He wanted to be a Yankee for the remainder of his career. And Theo went out there. Now, keep in mind, Theo was a Boston guy. So he was, not only in the same division, in the same league and division, but just the biggest rivalry in all of sports is the Yankees and the Red Sox. So he was their arch nemesis when it came to scooping up players. He went to him and orchestrated a deal saying, listen, we want Aroldis Chapman. We want him. And you've got the Red Sox on the up and up. Their farm system is getting stronger by the day. They're going to be World Series contenders in the next few years. I said that back then. Hell, I called it the year that they weren't even projected to make wild card. I predicted them to win the World Series, and that was in 2018, which they did. And he said, listen, you guys, even though you're the Yankees and you can afford whatever, it's not smart for you to pay him what he needs to be paid to extend him out the career that you want him to have here. Can we orchestrate a deal where we will pay him, take care of him, make sure that his arm is okay, because we have what it takes to go all the way, but we lack a true closer. And there's no more dominant closer than Aroldis Chapman. And then we will not fight you after the end of the year. We'll sign a one-year deal. We will gladly gift wrap him and send him back to you so he can be a Cub for the long haul. This gets him a chance at a ring that nothing's guaranteeing that the Yankees will get, and he hasn't had. And it will give him a chance to have a meaningful season, to play for something and still be a Yankee when it's all said and done. Nobody thought he'd be able to get that job done. No, I didn't even think he would be able to get it done. So he's one of the Yankees. Out of pure spite, they may tell him no, and either do nothing with him or then go orchestrate a deal that's just like Theo's for another team, just because Theo was a Boston guy. He got the job done. In 2016, the Cubs break the longest drought in the history of sports, 108 years, and win the World Series. And still to this day, it doesn't seem real. And now, after 9 years, he's stepping down. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to give you a free play, because for all the people that fast forwarded directly to the back of this video, like I know some did, they're going to be searching for this free play. Let's make them search. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to get into an in-depth breakdown of it, because that'll make it easier for them to find. So, on Sunday afternoon, the Colts are playing the Packers. Right now, the Packers are catching 2 points, so you can do plus 2 points at minus $1.10, or you can take them outright on the money line for plus $1.05. Either way you want to go is fine. If you want to put the 2 points in your back pocket, that is fine. If you want to take the money line, that is fine. This is a game that I think could be close. It should be close, but that's depending on how Aaron Rodgers plays. So this game could be decided by 2 points, or it could be a 14-point rout. Me personally, I took the 2 points and I laid the $1.10. Either way you want to do it is your choice, but my recommendation is to take the Green Bay Packers as a live dog on Sunday afternoon. That's your free play. But anyway, back to Theo Epstein. So one thing that I really liked about him and his speech for leaving is that he believes that the shelf life for someone in his type of position is 10 years. After 10 years, you've done everything that you can do, and you've really kind of overstayed your welcome. And the only reason that someone would stay after that is if they came in, they didn't truly have to rebuild. They ended up finding success in the first 3 years, getting a championship, and then afterwards being able to stay long enough to rebuild. And now you're seeing that rebuild come to life, and you don't want to leave because you don't want to say, hey, well, I rebuilt a team that's undoubtedly going to win a championship in the next 3 years, could potentially win multiples in the next 3 years, and this is what I built. So I'm going to sign a 3-year contract just to see my work at hand. Well, Theo knows he doesn't have that. He doesn't have a 2021 World Series champion in the Chicago Cubs. I mean, I guess anything's possible, but right now, they're going to have to make some shifts. They're going to have to make some moves. They're going to have to be willing to not make the playoffs for the next couple of years to ensure that they are relevant, dominant in their division, and are back in championship talk in less than 5 years. Because I don't see the Ricketts giving Jeb Hoyer, who is going to be taking that. Now, Jeb and Theo are, they're like this. Jeb is a true product of Theo style baseball. So, them parting ways, this could be very short lived, or this could be what is to come for the future, because I don't think Jeb doesn't have the track record that Theo does for someone to say, well, we're going to give you 10 years to see if you can do what Theo did. Now, if they knew that if they gave him 10 years, that would guarantee a championship, that'd be all fine and dandy. Won 108 years, why not guarantee one in the next decade? But you can't do that with him. One thing that I liked that Theo said was that, he had another year left of a $40 million contract, and with incentives and everything, he was owed about $10 million. Well, with the teams being so financially impacted because of COVID-19, not getting the amount of games, not getting the amount of money with TV contracts, not having fans in the stands, not selling concessions, just so much financially impacting them, that even a big market team that has more money than God, like the Cubs, they're still going to have to think about that going into next year. They're still not going to spend as much money because they had a season where they essentially didn't make anything. They signed TV contracts just to pay the players what they could and move on and hope for the best in 2021. So he said it would be a lot easier to make decisions without having a $10 million paycheck looming over, knowing that I don't want to come back the next year. He loves the city. He said that he's buying season tickets to the Cubs, and he plans on attending games just as he has for the past decade, and being a part of baseball and making the game better, maybe a role in the commissioner's office. I think that Theo being the commissioner of baseball would be fantastic. Anything to get Rob Manfred out of there, really. But I think he said that he does fully intend at some point in the future to run an organization. He wants to be a part of another rebuild, but he would like to do it as a part of an ownership group. Now, Theo isn't wealthy enough to go buy a team by any measure, but a small market team with Theo willing to put up 15 to 20 million in capital if he has that, which is very well possible that he does. Anybody in the world with a brain that has the money would finance the rest for Theo, or at least come up with the capital and go partner with him, because they know wherever he went, he would triple the team's value, win him a championship, and it would be the best investment they've ever made. So thinking about it, the question that I keep getting is, where do you think Theo will end up? Well, I think the team that's going to pursue him the hardest is the Phillies. I think outside of that, the team that would pursue him the hardest would be the Mets, and that because that's two teams. One that's desperate to see the money that they've spent and the positions that they've taken actually work, so that it's not considered the biggest failure in sports. And the Mets, because they're turning over a new page, a new chapter, a new book, if you will, new ownership group, new management. Um, new front office, everything. So why not get somebody in there that could be a rebuild? But the Mets really aren't rebuilding. The Mets have, I mean, yeah, Robinson Cano, he fucked up. He's out for 2021. But you still have players like Ahmed Rosario. You still have Pete Alonso. You still have talent on that team. You still have enough talent on that team to make wild card if you play well enough. The Phillies have more talent than that. They just can't get out of their own damn way. The Phillies just suck in every way. And it's not because they don't have the talent. I mean, they have more talent than most. I mean, they have top 10 talent. Um, and one thing that Theo said that's always rang true is that he loves the task and the art of the rebuild. He loves taking a team that has nothing, stripping it down to less than nothing, and building it up to what you see, the Red Sox and the Cubs. Um, he's not interested in building it up and then just maintaining it afterwards. He's not into maintenance, he's into building. Um, you don't really have that with the Phillies and the Mets. The Mets have the puzzle pieces. You just need somebody with half a brain to go in there and start the corners for them so they can fill in the rest. That's all the Phillies need. The Mets aren't quite there, but a couple of pieces put in place, a good draft, a couple of good trades, maybe a little bit of overspending one year, just breaching that, salary cap and going into the luxury tax, then the Mets are there. You don't need 10 years of one of the brightest building minds in baseball to do that. So then you start thinking about San Diego. They have maybe this big drought. It doesn't matter. Look at what they have. They have Tatis. They have Machado. They now have Clevenger. They now have all these pieces where, no, they're not World Series team yet. But that's because the team that you have on the field, which is World Series talent, has to get used to playing with each other for more than a 60-game, fucked up season. So a couple of years, you've got it. It doesn't take Theo Epstein to build that team. Um, you look at you look at teams like the Angels. That'd be a good spot for him. But then again, I don't think he wants to go into a team with the likes of the best player in baseball. Some consider the best player of all time. Even though they're a team that consistently does not make the postseason, not even close, a team that's consistently at the bottom of their division, that yes, it's going to take a lot of work. It's not going to be hard for Theo. You're starting out ahead of the curve because you have Mike Trout, you have Anthony Rendon, and you have Joe Madden. Not only one of the best managers in the game, but you have somebody that you hired as manager in 2014 to lead the Cubs to a World Series. So you're starting out way ahead of any other job you ever have, and I don't think Theo likes that. So we go and we look at, okay, where are teams that are just drought stricken, have no hope, that he can go in and start from scratch? Well, there's really not that many. If you would have said that a few years ago, there would have been quite a handful. But Miami's not there anymore. As I told you, they wouldn't be. Cincinnati's not there anymore. Pittsburgh, yeah, but they're not really drought stricken like the Red Sox were, the Cubs were. Nor is that city drought stricken. Not with the Steelers, not with the Penguins. I mean, and I don't know if he's fit for Pittsburgh. I really don't. Really, I think there would be three options that would fit Theo's criteria. Number one being Seattle. Drought stricken, couldn't even win one with A-Rod or King Griffey Jr. They're sitting as about as bottom of barrel you could get. And they're in a big market. They've got money, and I think he could go in there and build it. I just don't know if he believes that that's enough of a baseball town for him to really get excited about being there for 10 years. I would say that if we'd have had this conversation 3, 4 years ago, the White Sox would have been a shoe-in. But the White Sox have the pieces now. It's just putting them in the right place. Again, doesn't really fit his criteria. Plus, I don't know if he wants to go from leading the Cubs to immediately going across town to the south side and taking over the White Sox. I don't think that would be good for his rep in the game. Second to Seattle, I think that the only other team that we could look at that would be close would be Baltimore. Can't really say it about Miami anymore. Like I said, you can't say it about Cincinnati anymore. You can't say it about San Diego anymore. You still can't say it about San Francisco. They've got talent, even though I think that'd be a great place for Theo. I don't know that he'd want to take over Anaheim because he feels like he's got the upper hand. So I really think that the two biggest ones would be Seattle or Baltimore. I think Baltimore based, he's an East Coast guy, number one. He's a Northeast guy, and that's close enough, upper mid-Atlantic. It's small market, but it's surrounded by big markets. It's in that general region of Philly, New York, Boston. You're really not that far from places like Cleveland and Pittsburgh and St. Louis even. So I think that would be the perfect spot for him. And here's why I say I think Baltimore may have the best shot at him. Because Baltimore actually has, well, there's one other team, Kansas City. Mike Matheny's the manager, which I think is great. Patrick Mahomes just came in and bought in as a minority owner. They've got talent. They've got draft picks. They've got leverage within their division because of people that are a little bit overextended as far as what they've spent, like the Twins. So I think that they could really, really use someone like a Theo to come in, say, listen, we're going to take 2 years to kick back, evaluate, worry about the farm system. Whatever happens on the big league field happens. Let's just get fans excited about coming to the ballpark. That's all we need to worry about. Let's generate revenue. And then in 2 years, we're going to hit the ground running. You'll see Kansas City back in a World Series in 5. That's just how he is, and he would be in a market that could do it. But again, reason that I think Baltimore would be it would be small market, smaller. I think somebody could come in and buy that team for a lot less than they think, or at least buy into the team. It certainly wouldn't be anywhere near the $1 billion range, and it would be a team that could be worth well over $1 billion once they win a championship. Baltimore is a very proud town. When their team is doing well, they support. Even when the Orioles weren't doing good, they still support at the right times. It's a very proud town. In the surrounding suburbs, you have people now that obviously are bandwagoning over to the Nationals or to, it's just like when the Ravens came to town. You see a lot of Ravens fans now because obviously they've had the success. But you look at baseball, people are bandwagoning over to the Nationals, but the Nationals still don't and probably won't ever have the fan base that the Orioles do. The Orioles are a storied program, a storied franchise. They had someone that, like the Ripkins, that can never be replaced in this game. And I think that if he got a little capital behind him with a personal investment to come in, maybe start an LLC, with him being the chairman of it, to come in, buy a minority piece of the team, 10, 15%, and then still get a decent salary, maybe half of what he normally would, to come in and be the director of baseball operations or be the general manager or president. President of baseball operations would suit him more. It'd be a lot less travel. But to do something like that, but then have a vested stake into the ownership group where you could say, okay, I'm going to give you 10 years. And then after that, I decide what I want to do. Even if I want to step down, I can still kind of help maintain for the betterment of my investment. And then when I want to get out, I would be selling it for what another 20 years on the field would be worth, because I'm making tens of millions of dollars in profit because I just brought a championship, a team that's just drought stricken when it comes to championships, a championship. And I'll be honest with you, everybody knows how I feel about the Orioles. They are my American League team, and I love Camden Yards. That's my second place, that I feel like is home outside of Wrigley Field. So if Theo went to Baltimore, I would most certainly buy season tickets just so I knew that I had the ticket to when he did it. And I would have no problem with it. I wouldn't be there in the dog days of summer to watch him play the Blue Jays because I'd be at Wrigley, but I think that's his best fit. I really, really do. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I know we've drawn this out a little bit, but I know people wanted me to talk about it. As far as teams that I think will approach him the most, because he did say that if a team calls, he'll answer. He's not looking to do anything in 2021. I think that, he says he wants to spend more time with his wife and his two sons. I know that's true, but I think just as much of that is he wants to see this whole COVID thing go away and see how teams respond to it their first season back, and see how they get, like right now teams are like this. He wants to see what happens after they can finally get back like this. Is it up? Is it down? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it a mixture of all of it? And then he'll be able to decide where is the best fit for me, because him deciding it right now and actually putting 2020 into the mix of decision making probably wouldn't be the best idea for him. So kick back, take a year off, enjoy your family, stay in Chicago, especially in the nice summer months, catch games at Wrigley in the bleachers. And either he goes to work for the commissioner's office, maybe he becomes the commissioner of baseball, or I think he ends up in a place like Kansas City or Baltimore. I think Kansas City would be the best. Knowing him, if he just wasn't looking at who the players were and it was just going to get a championship, I think Anaheim has a really good shot. And I think Scott Boras could be part of that influence because he is a big advocate, season ticket holder, owns a suite there. And so I think he's got a really good shot at being in a small market team versus what he's used to, big market baseball. Like I said, those are my three teams for him. Baltimore being number one, but I think the teams that go after him the hardest, at least for the remainder of this offseason until they give up or until Theo makes a decision, would be Phillies go after him the hardest, and the Mets are just shortly follow that. I hope he doesn't end up either, especially the godforsaken Phillies. God forbid he ends up in that shithole. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Hope you enjoyed the free play. For everyone that fast forwarded to the end of the video, the play's not here. Somewhere back in the video, and I didn't give a full breakdown on it. I just gave out the play, so it will be hard to find. That's why you should watch the videos. That's why you should listen to what I have to say. That's why you should get the entertainment out of it. We just had a really nice conversation about Theo. Again, it's with a heavy heart. I hate to see him leave Chicago, but I like Jeb Hoyer. I have the utmost faith in him. But I hope that the Ricketts give him a real shot, and that's at least 5 to 7 years, along with letting him do it with David Ross and seeing what they can do over the next 5 years before they even humor the idea of making a change following that. So we'll see what happens. The only thing that I hope he can keep that stud three together: Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez. I hope. I have a feeling one of them is going to be gone, and God damn it, it better not be Javier Baez. I don't care if they get rid of the entire team as long as you don't touch him. Javi stays. But I hope that those three can stay. But I do feel like that KB may be the one gone. They're going to have some tough decisions to make, and it sucks that Theo's not going to be there, because one thing he understands and cares about is the perception of the fan, because above all else, he loves the game, and he's a fan first. And I know he cares about what it does to the fans when a player comes in or leaves or whatever. So hopefully that won't take away my hobby. So, all right, guys, glad you asked about this topic because it was a good way for me to vent about it. Again, we still got some topics to cover with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, what's going on with South Carolina, Will Muschamp not being there anymore, and what I think about the remainder of the college football season and who I think is most deserving of the number one spot right now and who I think will be there in the Final Four for the college football playoffs or the extension of it, whatever. I'm not going to extend if it's 6, 8, 10 teams, whatever they end up deciding to do at the last minute, but who I think will be the top four going into the postseason. So I love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Can't wait to see you on the next one. If you want that free play and you didn't get it, go search for it somewhere back in this video. Love you guys.